The small town of Salem, Virginia was in the transition from fall to winter. Red and yellow leaves from the street trees were gradually falling to the ground, and the morning and evening chill was becoming more severe. Martha Johnson sighed deeply as she gazed out the window of the accounting office. She was looking forward to her son Ethan's winter break, which would begin tomorrow. "Martha, have you finished checking the Hopkins family paperwork?" Brought back to reality by her colleague Jane's voice, Martha smiled and nodded. "Just a bit more. I'll finish it today." Martha had been working at the small accounting firm for over 10 years. She was beloved by many clients for her trustworthiness and gentle smile. Her neat brown hair and somewhat rounded, kind features gave her an approachable appearance. After finishing work, Martha headed home. The two-story house in a quiet suburban neighborhood was one she and her husband Richard had purchased 10 years ago. On the surface, they embodied the American dream. Her husband was a well-known real estate agent in the area, and their son had just started at the local university with excellent grades. The house, surrounded by a white picket fence, had a well-maintained garden that was the envy of the neighbors. When Martha opened the front door, she could see Richard in the kitchen. He had once been handsome and full of confidence, but lately he looked haggard. He was checking something on his cell phone with an irritated look, but as soon as he noticed his wife's return, he immediately turned off the screen. "Welcome home," Richard's voice sounded tired. "You're late again today." "Year-end is always busy," Martha replied while taking off her coat. "Ethan's coming home tomorrow afternoon, right?" Richard nodded vaguely. "Ah, that's right. I'll handle picking him up from the airport." Standing in the kitchen, Martha asked while opening the refrigerator, "How was work today? Did the Roberts property sell?" "Not yet," a hint of irritation mixed in Richard's voice. "The market's cooling down lately. Next month will be tough too." Martha studied her husband's face. The eyes that once sparkled now seemed clouded with anxiety and impatience. The real estate market downturn was putting enormous pressure on Richard. For 6 months, he hadn't been able to close any major deals. And lately, Martha had noticed something odd about him. He had been coming home late more often and making sudden trips out. "If you have something troubling you, you can talk to me about it," Martha said gently. Richard forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just a little tired. Things should improve next month." The next day, Ethan returned from college. The 19-year-old had his father's handsome features and his mother's kind eyes. "Mom, Dad, I'm home." Ethan embraced his parents. His voice overflowed with the relief of returning home. At dinner, Ethan enthusiastically talked about his college life. However, his keen gaze occasionally turned toward his father's face. After dinner, while Martha was clearing the dishes, Ethan approached his mother. "Mom, I need to talk to you," his voice was serious. "Have you noticed anything different about Dad?" Martha paused momentarily. "What do you mean?" "I just think he's acting strange," Ethan continued, choosing his words carefully. "It's been bothering me for a while. He goes out frequently, and when he's talking to someone on the phone and I approach, he suddenly hangs up." Martha sighed. "Your father is feeling the pressure at work. The real estate market has been tough lately." "But, Mom..." "Don't worry," Martha put her hand on her son's shoulder. "Adults have their own troubles. Your father is trying his best." Ethan seemed about to say something but eventually just nodded silently. To Martha, it appeared her son had more to say, but she didn't press further. Busy with year-end accounting work, she went to bed early that night with papers in hand. A few days later, Martha woke up in the middle of the night and noticed Richard wasn't in bed. The clock showed 2 a.m. When she went downstairs, she saw light leaking from the study and heard Richard's low voice. Peeking through the door gap, she saw her husband on the phone with someone. "I need a little more time." "No, don't worry. Everything will go according to plan." Martha returned to the bedroom with a sense of unease, telling herself it was just work talk. The next morning, when she asked Richard about it, he only said he was negotiating a big deal and offered no further explanation. That night, Ethan sneaked into his father's.
Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I do it too, link below if you're curious.
Study. He had been suspicious of his father's behavior for some time and was determined to uncover the truth. When he opened a drawer, he found life insurance policies for both his mother and himself, along with printed emails exchanged with an unknown woman. Ethan felt his hands trembling. The content suggested his father was planning something terrible. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Turning around, he saw Richard standing at the door. In his eyes was a coldness Ethan had never seen before. "Mrs. Johnson, please prepare yourself as best you can. Your son's condition is extremely serious." Outside the intensive care unit at St. Mary's Hospital, Dr. Green looked Martha straight in the eyes while quietly delivering the news. Martha collapsed into a chair, covering her face with trembling hands. Just a few hours ago, she had been busy with year-end accounting work. And now, her son was fighting for his life. "We don't yet know all the details of the accident," the doctor continued. When the ski resort staff found Ethan, he was already unconscious. It seems he slid on ski equipment with non-functioning brakes and crashed into a tree. Richard, standing beside Martha, was surprisingly calm. "Will he wake up?" His voice lacked emotion. "I can't say at this point. The head injury is serious, and there's swelling in the brain. To be honest, I believe the chances of him waking up are low." Martha broke down crying. Meanwhile, Richard checked his watch, muttered, "I need to contact the insurance company," and walked out into the hallway. From that day on, Martha's life revolved around the hospital. She took time off work and spent most of her days at Ethan's bedside. Only the white hospital walls and the rhythmic sounds of the life support equipment marked the passage of time. On the third morning, when Martha arrived at the hospital room, Nurse Ellen was waiting for her. "Mrs. Johnson, there's something I'd like to discuss with you," she guided Martha outside the door. "There's something concerning about Ethan's accident." Martha caught her breath. "What do you mean?" According to the accident investigation team, Ellen continued in a lowered voice after checking their surroundings, "There's a possibility that the brake mechanism on Ethan's skis was deliberately damaged. They say the pattern is different from normal wear or malfunction." Martha was speechless. "You mean, it wasn't an accident?" Ellen chose her words carefully. "I can't say anything definitive. But the investigation is ongoing. Also, when your husband came yesterday, he asked to examine Ethan's ski equipment. But it had already become police evidence." Hearing those words planted a seed of anxiety in Martha's heart. That evening, Martha returned home exhausted. Richard was watching TV in the living room but didn't look up when she entered. "Ellen mentioned that you wanted to see Ethan's ski equipment," Martha asked. Richard froze momentarily but quickly returned to a calm expression. I just wanted to check the condition. I was concerned whether the equipment Ethan was using was safe." The explanation sounded reasonable, but doubts began to grow in Martha's mind. She recalled her husband's behavior, his unnatural calmness upon hearing of the accident, his brief stays at the hospital, and his recent secretive phone calls and outings. A few days later, Martha decided to investigate Richard's study. While he was out, she opened drawers and began checking documents. What she found were 2 high-value life insurance policies, one for herself and one for Ethan. Both had been significantly increased in amount 6 months earlier. "What are you doing?" Turning around, she saw Richard standing at the entrance to the room. Martha couldn't hide her agitation. "Oh, you're back. I was just looking for some bills." Richard's eyes were full of suspicion. "In my study?" "Yes, joint bills," Martha feigned calmness. "By the way, why did you increase the life insurance amounts?" Richard's expression hardened. Just a precaution. In these recessionary times, I wanted to ensure the family's security. The explanation made sense, but alarms were ringing deep in Martha's heart. The next day, she checked Richard's credit card statements. They showed charges from unknown hotels and purchases of expensive jewelry. Martha felt her stomach sink. Perhaps this was just evidence of an affair. But combined with her son's accident, more terrifying possibilities emerged. That weekend, as Martha sat alone drinking coffee in the hospital cafeteria, her high school friend Sarah Williams approached her. "Martha. It's been a while. I'm so worried about Ethan." Sarah sat down next to her friend and took her hand. "How are you doing?" Martha explained the situation while fighting back tears. Sarah listened quietly throughout. "Richard has been acting strange," Martha confessed. "I'm starting to think he might know something about Ethan's accident." Sarah said with a serious expression, "Martha, I may be retired, but my lawyer's instinct tells me this needs to be investigated." While Martha was talking with Sarah, Richard was having a serious conversation with a doctor in the hospital hallway. When Martha returned, Richard turned to face her. "Martha, I've talked with Dr. Green. There's no sign of improvement in Ethan's condition. The doctor says it's time to consider removing life support." Martha turned pale. "What are you saying? It's only been a week. There's still hope." Richard shrugged. "Face reality. From a medical standpoint, and economically, further life support is." "Economically?" Martha raised her voice. "Are you considering your son's life as an economic issue?" Richard fell silent. Martha trembled at the momentary cruelty that flashed in his eyes. That night, Martha decided to stay by Ethan's bedside. She held her son's cold hand and fell asleep while praying. When she awoke in the middle of the night, she felt that the hand she had been holding had slipped something into her pocket. Her fingers touched a small metal object. Martha pulled it out. It was a small brass key. Attached to it was a crumpled piece of paper. When she opened it, there was a message written in shaky handwriting. "Mom, use this key to unlock." Martha rolled the small key in her palm, feeling her heartbeat quicken. In the dim light of the hospital room, she read the note written in trembling letters once more. Had Ethan prepared this before the accident? Or was he trying to communicate something from within his coma? The door to the hospital room opened, and Richard entered. Martha hurriedly slipped the key and note into her pocket. "You're still not going home." Richard's voice sounded tired, but his eyes followed the movement of his wife's hands. "Did you find something?" "Nothing." Martha gripped her son's hand again. "I'm just praying." Richard looked out the window. "I talked to Dr. Green. He'll bring the paperwork tomorrow." "About the life support issue?" Martha stood up instinctively. "Richard, it's only been a week. We need more time. Ethan will come back, I know it." Richard sighed. "Martha, face reality. Ethan isn't coming back. We need to move on." "Move on?" Martha's voice rose. "How can we move on when our son is hovering between life and death?" Richard pressed his lips together and left the room. Martha grasped Ethan's hand again and spoke in a trembling voice. "Ethan, can you hear me? It's Mom. You want to tell me something, don't you?" "All right, I'll find out what this key opens." The next morning, Martha returned home early. Richard had already left, and the house was silent. Entering Ethan's room, she saw traces of her son's life: university pennants, high school swimming trophies, science books lined up on the bookshelf. Fighting back tears, Martha began searching through drawers, the closet, and the desk. "Ethan, were you hiding something?" Martha had searched every corner of the room but couldn't find a keyhole that matched the key. Just as she was about to give up, she reached under the bed. Her fingertips touched a metal box. Pulling it out, she found it was a small safe. With growing anticipation, she inserted the key, but it didn't fit. A different key then, Martha murmured. Next, she decided to explore Richard's study. With her husband absent, this was her only chance. She tried the key in every lock in the house, but none matched. What does this key open? Martha sat down at the kitchen table, exhausted. That's when her eyes fell on Ethan's college student ID. As she stared at the photo attached to the refrigerator, a sudden realization hit her. Could it be his dorm room? That evening, Martha called Sarah. I want to go to Ethan's university tomorrow. Could you stay with Ethan while I'm away from the hospital? I don't trust Richard. The next morning, Martha headed to Central University. The campus was quiet during winter break. She explained the situation to the dormitory manager, who allowed her special access to her son's room. The dorm room was simple but organized, reflecting Ethan's meticulous nature. Martha searched everywhere but couldn't find anything that the key might fit. Disappointed, she sat down at the desk. Casually opening a drawer, she found school supplies and stationery neatly arranged. When she pulled out the bottom drawer, there was cardboard laid at the bottom. Following an intuition, Martha lifted the cardboard. Underneath was a hidden diary. Could this be it? The diary had no keyhole but was tightly closed with a rubber band. With trembling hands, Martha removed the band and opened the diary. Inside, her son's neat handwriting had meticulously recorded the events of the past few months. September 15th, something's wrong with Dad. He goes out frequently and makes calls in secret. Mom doesn't seem to notice. October 3rd, I searched Dad's study. Found life insurance policies for Mom and me. The amounts have been significantly increased. Something's wrong. October 20th, found emails on Dad's computer. Exchanges with a woman named VK. Not an affair. They're planning something more terrifying. Martha turned to the next page with trembling hands. November 12th, recorded Dad and the woman's phone conversation. They're trying to kill Mom and me. For the insurance money. Dad is apparently drowning in debt. I need to gather evidence. December 1st, going home for winter break. This is my last chance to gather evidence. I feel like Dad is watching me. Can't tell Mom yet. Don't have definitive proof. The last page was dated just before the vacation. December 15th, Dad invited me on a ski trip. It might be a trap. But I have to go or he'll get suspicious. I've hidden the evidence I've collected in library locker number 305 and left the key with Mike to give to Mom if anything happens. God, I want to protect Mom. Tears streamed down Martha's cheeks. Her son had known everything. And he had put himself in danger to protect her. She rushed to the university library. The campus was deserted, but the library was open for limited hours. She found the locker room in the basement and located locker number 305. The small key fit perfectly. Ethan. Martha whispered. Inside the locker was just one brown envelope. Opening it, she found a USB drive and several documents. The documents were printouts of emails between Richard and a woman named Victoria Cromer. They detailed a horrifying plan. Ethan's ski trip is the perfect opportunity. If it looks like an accident, no one will suspect. If he dies, you'll get half the insurance money. The other half will come from Martha. But hurry. The bank won't extend the loan. Everything is going according to plan. Frank tampered with the ski brakes. A father who doesn't mourn his son's death would be suspicious, so I'll act appropriately grieving. A week later, Martha's car brakes will malfunction in the same way. Martha felt nauseous as she read through all the documents. The USB drive contained recordings of conversations between Richard and Victoria, documentation of Richard's debts, and a history of explicit emails between them. Now I understand everything. Martha securely placed the envelope in her bag and left the library. Her heart was filled with fear and anger. Richard had tried to kill her and Ethan. For insurance money. And now, Ethan was hovering between life and death in a hospital bed. Richard was even trying to remove life support. In the car on the way back, Martha called Sarah. "Sarah, I found evidence. Richard is behind it all. I'm going to the police." "Martha, meet me before you go to the police. Come to my house. Let's look at the evidence together and decide how to proceed." Martha stopped by the hospital to check on Ethan. There was no change in his condition, but the life support equipment was functioning normally. Nurse Ellen was in the room. "Mrs. Johnson, your husband was here earlier. He said he'd bring paperwork about the life support tomorrow." With a determined expression, Martha told Ellen, "Ellen, if Richard comes when I'm not here tomorrow, don't let him sign anything. Don't let him do anything without my permission." Ellen was surprised by her urgent manner but nodded. Martha squeezed Ethan's hand and whispered, "Ethan, Mom found everything. I'll protect you. I promise." As she left the room, she saw Richard at the end of the hallway. When he noticed Martha, he approached with a smile. That smile now looked like a terrifying mask to Martha. "Martha, where have you been? I called you several times." "I just went out for a bit," Martha feigned calmness. "About tomorrow's paperwork, I won't sign it." Richard's eyes flashed coldly for a moment. "Martha, be realistic. Ethan isn't coming back. We need to move on." "I still have hope," Martha retorted. "And as long as Ethan needs me, I'll be here." The two faced each other in silence. Martha's heart was beating rapidly. Richard might be beginning to suspect. She needed Sarah's help before taking the evidence to the police. And above all, she had to protect her son. Following Sarah's advice, Martha headed to the police station the next morning with the evidence she had collected. The Salem police station was a stone building in the center of the small town. As she was about to park her car, she encountered a surprising sight. Richard's car was already parked in front of the police station. Anxiety and fear ran down her spine. Entering the police station, she found Richard chatting amicably with Police Chief Jim Powell. The two had been friends since high school and played golf together every weekend. When Richard spotted his wife, he displayed an oddly gentle smile. "Martha, what are you doing here?" Martha answered while hiding her agitation, "What are you doing here?" Chief Powell stood between them. "Richard was just updating me on Ethan's accident. It's truly unfortunate. But I'm relieved to hear the doctors are doing their best." "Jim, I need to talk to you." Martha opened her bag with trembling hands and took out the envelope containing the evidence. "I want you to see this. Richard has." "Martha has been mentally unstable lately," Richard interrupted. His voice sounded concerned, but his eyes were cold. "She's confused by her son's accident. The doctors say she should receive professional care." "That's not true." Martha raised her voice. "I'm completely sane. Look at this evidence. Richard planned Ethan's accident. He and his mistress." "Mistress?" Chief Powell raised an eyebrow. His eyes turned to Richard, but his friend sadly shook his head. "See what she's saying." Richard sighed. "She's consumed by delusions." Dr. Green was concerned about her condition too. Chief Powell accepted Martha's envelope but placed it on his desk without looking at its contents. "Martha, I understand you're confused. But groundless accusations will only make things worse." "Groundless?" Martha trembled with anger. "Look inside. There are emails and recordings." "Martha, let's go home," Richard grabbed her arm. Martha felt fear at the strength of his grip. "You need rest. Take her home, Chief Powell said. Seek medical help if necessary. Martha looked at the envelope with a sense of despair. The police chief was clearly on Richard's side. She shook off her arm and fled the police station. Back in her car, she called Sarah with trembling hands. Sarah, the police won't help. Richard got there before me. Calm down, Martha, Sarah's voice was steady. Let's think of another approach. I have a friend who's a state police investigator. He won't be influenced by local connections. But if we had more conclusive evidence. I understand, Martha resolved. I'll check Ethan's room once more. I might have missed something. Upon returning home, Martha began thoroughly searching Ethan's room again. She checked the floorboards, examined the air conditioning vents, and looked behind the bookshelf. Just as she was about to give up, she noticed an unnatural bulge at the back of the closet. A section of wallpaper was slightly raised. When she peeled back the wallpaper, a small hole appeared. Inside was a laptop. Martha's heart raced. When she turned it on, a password screen appeared. What could it be? Ethan's password. She tried every combination she could think of: her son's birthday, her own birthday, family anniversaries. None worked. Panic struck her. Ethan must have left a hint. Martha checked the diary again. Turning to the last page, she noticed a casual note: Salem High Swim Team, 2022 State Championship, time 1 minute and 58.03 seconds. She tried entering 158.03. Wrong. Looking at the diary again, she saw small writing under the numbers that read, "Read backwards to find the answer." When she entered 30.851, the screen unlocked. On the laptop, there was a folder called Truth. Inside were detailed diary entries recorded by Ethan over several months, recordings of conversations between Richard and Victoria, and copies of Richard's financial records. The diary chronicled Ethan's journey from first noticing his father's suspicious behavior to uncovering the truth. September 2nd, saw Dad going out late at night. When he came back, he was carrying something from the trunk of his car. The next morning, I found mud on his pants. September 10th, checked Dad's phone. Found messages with a woman named Victoria Cromer. At first, I thought it was an affair. But the content of the messages suggested something more. September 20th, planted a small recorder on Dad's computer. Recorded him talking on the phone about insurance money, accident, and perfect plan. Mom is in danger. Martha continued reading. Ethan had investigated his father's debts and discovered he owed over $5 million. And he had uncovered the full extent of the plan devised by Richard and Victoria. November 25th, I'm torn about whether to tell Mom. But without decisive evidence, Mom won't doubt Dad. Above all, I don't want to come between Mom and Dad. I need more evidence. December 10th, Dad invited me on a ski trip. It might be a trap. But if I refuse, he might change the plan. I have to go. I've hidden the evidence in a safe place. I've also told my best friend Mike. If anything happens. With tear-blurred eyes, Martha read the final entry. December 15th, leaving tomorrow. I'm scared. But I have to go to protect Mom. If this diary is being read, something has happened to me. Mom, I love you. I'm convinced it's Dad's doing. The evidence is there. Don't blame yourself. This was my choice. Martha covered her face with her hands and wept quietly. Her son had put his own life at risk to protect her. She heard the front door open. Richard had returned. Martha quickly hid the laptop and all the evidence. She called Sarah and told her everything. I'll come to the hospital in the morning with the state police investigator, Sarah said. Until then, don't leave Ethan's side. Don't let Richard know that you know everything. That night, Martha sat beside Ethan in the hospital, holding his hand. Richard appeared and showed a stack of papers to the nurse. "These are documents regarding the termination of life support," Richard explained calmly. "My wife and I don't want our son to suffer anymore." "I haven't signed anything," Martha shouted. "Continue Ethan's treatment." "Martha, calm down," Richard's voice was dangerously serene. "You and the boy have been in the way long enough." At those words, Nurse Ellen's eyes widened. She immediately left the room. "I know everything," Martha said quietly. "Ethan recorded it all. Your plans with Victoria, the debts." Richard's face hardened. "What do you know?" "Everything," Martha's voice trembled, but her eyes were filled with determination. "That you tampered with Ethan's ski equipment, that I was your next target." Richard's eyes gleamed menacingly. He stepped forward. "Where's the evidence?" The door opened, and Sarah entered with State Investigator Evans. Ellen was behind them. "Richard Johnson," Evans said, "you're under arrest for attempted murder." Richard lunged toward the window but was apprehended by two officers. He looked at Martha with hatred-filled eyes. "You always ruin everything," he spat. "This debt is because of your extravagance." "My fault." Martha looked incredulous. "You were the spendthrift." "I always economized." "Shut up," Richard shouted. "The plan was perfect. With you and the kid gone, a new life would have begun. With Victoria." "That's enough," Evans silenced him. "Everything you've said has been recorded." After Richard was taken away by the police, Martha returned to Ethan's bedside. She took his hand and whispered, "It's all right, Ethan. You're safe now. Your father has been arrested thanks to the evidence you collected. So please, wake up. Mom is waiting." 2 weeks after Richard's arrest, Martha was reading a book in Ethan's hospital room as usual. Soft light through the window illuminated her son's pale face. Suddenly, Ethan's fingers moved in her hand. "Ethan." Martha dropped her book and peered at her son's face. Ethan's eyelids trembled and slowly opened. His eyes were clouded with confusion and fatigue, but he was definitely conscious. "Mom." His voice was hoarse but clear. "Are you okay?" Martha embraced her son while crying. "Yes, I'm fine. Everything is fine now that you've woken up." The doctors called it a medical miracle. The swelling in Ethan's brain had subsided faster than expected. The road to recovery would be long, but he had shown a will to live. A few days later, when Ethan's consciousness became clearer, he asked in a weak voice, "Dad?" Martha squeezed her son's hand. "He's been arrested. Thanks to the evidence you collected." "I'm sorry, Mom," tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. "For not telling you the truth. I didn't want to hurt you." "You're the one who got hurt," Martha gently stroked her son's cheek. "You did well. Just as you tried to protect me, I'll protect you from now on." Richard's trial began 3 months after Ethan was discharged from the hospital. Local reporters packed the courtroom, making it a major story about the hidden face of a model family. The evidence was overwhelming: recordings, emails, and financial records collected by Ethan. And Richard's accomplice, Victoria Cromer, testified to everything as part of a plea deal. On the day of sentencing, the judge gave Richard a stern look. "You betrayed the sacred bond of family. There is no room for leniency for a father who tried to harm his son." Richard was sentenced to 25 years in prison. A year later, Martha and Ethan were having a quiet dinner in their new home. Ethan had completed long rehabilitation and returned to university. His left arm still bore scars from the accident, but his mental strength was growing day by day. "Today, we had 3 new participants in the Single Mother Support Program," Martha said with a smile. After Richard's incident, she had established an organization to support women in similar situations. They were scared at first, but they seemed encouraged when I told them your story. Ethan smiled. I'm glad if my story can help someone. Their conversation was enveloped by the sound of summer insects chirping outside the window. On the table was a new picture of Martha and Ethan, showing their peaceful smiles. Richard was spending isolated days in prison. Fellow inmates despised him as the man who tried to kill his own child, and no one came to visit him. After Victoria completed her 7-year sentence and was released, she moved to another town, but her past followed her, making it difficult to build a new life. Mom, Ethan said while eating apple pie for dessert, I think putting that key in your pocket that day was truly the right choice. Martha took her son's hand. We had the courage to find the truth. Yes, Ethan nodded. I think a real family is about protecting each other. Outside the window, the twilight sky began to turn a deep purple. With the arrival of a new night, hope for the future quietly began to light up in Martha and Ethan's hearts.